The rain had been falling for 2 days straight, the kind that didn't pour but pressed down, a grey, cold whisper soaking everything in silence. That kind of silence wasn't peace, it was pressure. Noah Cade didn't mind it. He preferred the sound of rain over voices, over memories. That was part of why he lived here, on the cragged edge of Oregon's northern coast, where the Pacific crashed without apology and the wind erased footprints before guilt could form behind them. His cabin sat tucked against a ridge, a squat shape of blackened wood and rusted tin, half hidden in sea fog and solitude. It wasn't home, but it was far enough. Ranger padded just ahead of him, his black and tan coat slick with mist, ears rotating like living radar. The dog didn't bark, didn't whine. He was trained not to, but he communicated more clearly than most men Noah had served with. A shift in muscle, a twitch of tail, the quiet way his eyes would narrow on something Noah couldn't yet see. They walked the beach in tandem, Noah's boots sinking into wet sand, Ranger's prints overlapping his. Every morning, same patrol. From the driftwood snag near the point to the outcrop that jutted like a broken tooth into the ocean. Routine, discipline, structure. The only things Noah had managed to keep. Until Ranger froze. 1 second he was trotting, the next stone still. Every muscle locked, head turned sharply inland, ears up, hackles barely raised. A low vibration rumbled in his throat. Not aggression, not warning, not fear. Something deeper, something off. Noah stopped beside him, eyes narrowed. "What is it?" he said softly. Ranger didn't move. He stepped forward instead, one slow, deliberate paw into the ferns that marked the border between beach and forest. He looked back once, just once, eyes sharp amber, locked on Noah's. Then he went in. Noah followed without hesitation. Years of training kicked in like an old switch. The forest swallowed him fast, light fading under thick pine canopy, sound muffled by layers of wet moss and loam. He moved silently. Ranger wasn't fast, but he was purposeful, weaving through brush and branches like he'd mapped the place in a dream. They climbed. Higher ground. Dense terrain. Miles off any known trail. Then Ranger stopped again. Noah stepped beside him and saw it, a structure barely visible through the trees, pressed into the side of a hill. Not a shack, not a hunting shelter. A cabin, built intentionally, hidden intentionally. Weathered but solid. Smoke curled from a chimney like the thread of a whisper. Noah's body went still. The kind of still that only came from years of knowing when things weren't right. Ranger let out a soft sound. Not a growl, a whine. Someone was inside. Noah crouched, scanning the area. No signs of recent activity. No footprints, no vehicles. Just that thin trace of smoke, and something he hadn't felt in years. Something off-center and pulling. He moved closer. Every step, calculated. Ranger matched his pace, a shadow pressed low to the earth. Then, movement. Inside. A cough, then a moan. Not a trap. Not yet. Noah reached the front door. It was old cedar, iron-latched. He knocked once with his knuckles. Nothing. Then a voice, hoarse and thin. Barely there. "Please!" He pushed the door open. The cabin smelled like smoke, sickness, and cedar. Inside was dark, save for the glow of embers in a stone hearth. A woman lay on a narrow cot in the corner, her skin pale and sweating, tangled dark hair stuck to her cheeks. Her chest rose and fell in quick, shallow gasps. And in the shadows, another presence. A little girl, maybe 5, stood beside her. Not crying, just watching. Noah didn't speak. He assessed. Fever, dehydration, exhaustion. There were blankets, barely. A few cans, no meds, no weapons. Then the woman's eyes fluttered open. She focused on him. "You followed the dog," she whispered. "Didn't you?" He nodded. He found us. Noah looked at the girl. She hadn't moved. Her arms were wrapped around something, a battered backpack with a hand-sewn patch shaped like a star. It looked expensive, out of place. Ranger moved to the cot's edge and sat, quiet, alert. The girl didn't flinch. Noah crouched near the woman. "You're burning up." 3 days, she said, barely audible. "Fever, won't break." "What's your name?" he asked. "Elena," she breathed. "This is Lily." Lily looked at him with dark eyes that were too old for her age. No fear, just calculation. Like she'd seen too much and stopped being surprised. "We can't leave," Elena said, voice cracking. "He'll find us." "Who?" Elena looked toward Lily but didn't answer. "I have supplies at my place," Noah said. "Medical, food, water." Her face tightened. He's watching, always watching. The tension in her voice wasn't just fear. It was trauma, deep and raw. She wasn't just sick. She was running. "I'll be back before night," he said, rising. She tried to sit up, failed. "You'll come back?" she asked. "I don't lie," Noah said. "Not to kids, not to dogs, not to people in trouble." Elena nodded, her eyes slipping closed. Noah turned to Lily. "I'm Noah," he said quietly. "This is Ranger." Lily didn't speak, but after a long beat, she gave the faintest nod, and that was enough. He left the cabin and stepped back into the forest. The rain had stopped, but the air still felt heavy. Something about that cabin wasn't just danger, it was destiny. Ranger stood beside him, alert, waiting. "Lead the way," Noah said. They moved fast. Faster than before, not as shadows, not as ghosts, but as guardians. Noah moved through the forest like a man waking from a long sleep. Every branch he ducked under, every moss-slicked stone he sidestepped, brought his body back into rhythm. Something more than memory, something deeper. Not muscle memory, instinct. The kind they train into you and hope you never need to use again. But he needed it now. Ranger trotted beside him, matching his pace with uncanny precision. The dog didn't glance up or back. He didn't need to. He could feel the change in Noah's breathing, the way his stride had lengthened, shoulders dropped into readiness. The man he followed was no longer the recluse by the sea. He was a seal again. Activated. A sick woman and a child were waiting, and something darker was hunting them. Noah didn't ask questions he didn't need the answers to yet. He focused on the terrain, how far they'd come, the slope of the land, the odd tree formations. He was mapping every landmark in his mind. An elk skull wedged in the crook of a cedar, a massive root system jutting out like a barricade, a stream with a sharp oxbow bend. This was no longer a casual hike. This was an extraction run. Back at the cabin, Elena had looked near collapse. Her skin too hot, her breath too shallow. She was dehydrated, likely septic. He'd seen that look before, on the field, intense, soaked with sweat and desperation. She had maybe a day if left untreated. Maybe less. But it wasn't just the fever that unsettled him. It was her fear. He's always watching. Those 3 words kept echoing. The child had said nothing, but her silence was the loudest alarm. Kids didn't shut down like that unless something, or someone, had stolen the part of them that still believed they were safe. Ranger let out a low chuff, barely audible, but Noah heard it. "I know," he murmured. "We're running out of time." They reached the ridgeline above Noah's cabin faster than expected. The small structure appeared below, solid against the fog. It looked empty, but that meant nothing. Instinct kicked again. He scanned. Then Ranger stopped. One paw lifted, head tilted. Noah crouched beside him, eyes narrowed. "Talk to me," he whispered. Ranger moved forward slowly, nose twitching. He paused at the edge of the porch and sat, Ears forward but calm. Clear. Noah pushed open the cabin door. Inside, everything was as he left it. Orderly, stark. A footlocker beneath the bed. A wall-mounted rack of tools. A folded wool blanket. No photos, no distractions. He went straight to the locker and unlatched the steel clasps. Inside, a trauma kit, sealed IV bags, antiseptics, antibiotics, a portable water filter, 2 ration bars. He worked quickly, packing what he needed into a heavy canvas satchel. Then he paused. His hand hovered over a black oilskin wrap tucked at the bottom. He unrolled it. A Sig Sauer rested inside, cold and clean. Service weapon, 3 full mags beside it. He stared at it. He hadn't touched a gun in over a year. Ranger nudged his hip, soft and deliberate. "Yeah," Noah muttered. "I know." He took it, loaded it, clipped it inside the satchel. He wasn't planning on a fight, but he was done pretending the world outside his door wasn't. Dangerous! Ranger barked once, short, sharp. Noah turned to the door. Someone had been here. Footprints, faint, just outside the cabin, partially washed by the earlier rain. A man's boot. Deep set. Recent. They were being watched, and it meant the clock just ran out. Noah's pulse didn't spike. His breath stayed steady, but his mind locked in. He moved out, Ranger-led, weaving down the trail like a silent sentinel, every hair alert. The fog had thickened. Shadows clung to the trees like ghosts. Halfway back to the hidden cabin, they heard it. A noise. Not natural. A shift. A branch stepped on, not broken. Noah dropped instantly, flattened against a log. Ranger did the same. They waited. Nothing. Then Ranger moved, crawling low, his body tense, eyes locked. Noah followed him 10 yards to the right, where the forest thinned slightly. And then he saw it. A drone, high-end, just above the canopy, hovering, watching. Noah swore under his breath. He pulled the flashlight from his pack, not to see, but to blind. With a flick of the beam straight into the lens, the drone jerked back, lost signal, or retreated. They moved again. Faster now. By the time they reached the hidden cabin, the wind had picked up. Trees swayed like slow dancers. Noah crouched at the edge of the clearing, satchel over one shoulder. Ranger scanned the tree line. "Hold," Noah said softly. He waited, counted, watched, then moved. He opened the door without knocking. Inside, it smelled worse. Elena lay half-conscious. Lily sat near her, holding her mother's hand, not crying. Noah set the pack down. "We don't have much time," he said, already unpacking. "This is going to sting." He sterilized her arm, inserted the IV, started the saline, crushed the antibiotics into a water mix, and helped her sip. Her eyes flickered. "Found him." "You came back." "I said I would. People say a lot of things." "I'm not people," he said. Lily watched him with that same unnerving calm. Noah glanced at Ranger. The dog had moved to the doorway, his body low, ears flicking at the wind. "We've got watchers," Noah said, to no one in particular. "Not just paranoia, drones, tracks." Elena tried to speak. "Not now," he cut in. "We need you stable, and we need to move. Soon." He didn't ask what they were running from. Not yet. But in his chest something had cracked open. A piece of him he thought had been buried in Kandahar, in Fallujah, in that final op that ended with a flag folded in his hands. Now it was waking up. Not the soldier, the protector. And that, he feared, would be much harder to shut down. Noah kept the fire low. Enough to warm the air, not enough to cast light through the cracks in the walls. Outside, the forest exhaled wind through damp branches. Inside, the silence pressed down like a loaded question. Elena lay sleeping, her color slightly better. The IV dripped slowly. Lily sat beside her, back straight, watching. Always watching. Ranger had positioned himself between the door and the cot, his body relaxed, but his eyes locked on the shadows beyond the window. He hadn't moved in over an hour, not asleep, just waiting. Noah sat at the table, cleaning his knife out of habit more than need. His fingers moved with quiet rhythm, but his thoughts were loud. The image had come back fast. Too fast. A different fire, a different mission. Desert, not forest. The smell of oil smoke and blood in the air. A teammate screaming over comms. And his voice, Jack Mendez, cracking in his ear just before it cut off for good. "Don't let them forget us, Cade." They hadn't even made it back with his body. Noah closed his eyes, exhaled. "Hey," a small voice said. He looked up. Lily, still quiet, still solemn, but now standing near him. She held something out, a photograph, faded edges. It had been tucked into the lining of her backpack. A family photo. Elena, looking healthier, standing beside a younger man, smiling, holding Lily, maybe 2 years old then, and another man, older, silver hair, cold blue eyes. "Who's this?" Noah asked gently, tapping the older man's image. Lily hesitated. "Then, my grandfather." Noah's eyes narrowed. The name came seconds later. Elena had whispered it in her fever, barely audible, but unmistakable. Silas Granger. The name rang a faint bell. A business article, maybe. West Coast tech scene. Noah wasn't a man of headlines, but even in his isolated world, certain names carried weight. Elena stirred. "I should have burned that photo," she said softly, eyes half open. Noah stood and handed it to her. "I figured you kept it for a reason." She didn't respond at first, just stared at the image. "My late husband's father, Silas Granger, CEO of Novacore Systems, billionaire, strategist, sociopath." Her tone was bitter, but there was fear underneath. "I used to work for him, as his executive liaison. Then I married his son, Jason. We had Lily. Everything seemed livable for a time." "What changed?" She looked at Lily, then back to Noah. "He wanted Lily. After the accident, the boat crash, when Jason and I were thrown into the water, only Lily and I survived. The Coast Guard found us 2 miles off the wreck. The investigation ruled it an accident. But I know what I saw." Her hands trembled slightly. She clenched them in her lap. Jason's safety lines were cut, and the GPS beacon was turned off. That was no malfunction. It was engineered. "You think Silas had his own son killed?" "I know he did." Noah didn't flinch. He had seen what power did to men, especially the kind who had everything except control over death, inheritance, or free will. "He called me to his office 2 weeks after the funeral, told me he'd already set up a legal motion to assume guardianship over Lily, said I was unstable, grieving, unfit. He called her his long-term asset." Noah's eyes hardened. "And the inheritance?" "She gets full control at 21. Until then, it's locked in a trust. He's the interim administrator. But if I'm gone, custody goes to him. And he's made it very clear that accidents happen." "Why run now?" Elena gestured toward Lily's backpack. "Because I didn't leave empty-handed." From the side pocket, she pulled out a sleek drive. Military-grade, hardened shell, biometric encryption. "I copied files from his private server. Emails, contracts, surveillance footage, blackmail payments to senators and federal auditors. If I go public, it's enough to bury him." "But going public would mean putting Lily in danger anyway." She nodded. "That's why I ran. We disappeared. Used burner phones. No digital footprint. I thought I had enough time, but 2 days ago I spotted a drone. One of his. I smashed it. Then Lily got sick. I couldn't risk a hospital." Noah ran a hand through his hair, silent for a long beat. "Your plan was to disappear?" "Yes. And now?" She looked him dead in the eye. I don't know. That's the truth. Noah paced once, then again. Ranger stood, stretched, padded toward Lily and sat beside her. She reached down instinctively and touched the top of his head. He didn't bark when he found us. Lily whispered. Noah turned. What? He didn't bark. She said again. Dogs usually bark, but he didn't. He just came in. Noah knelt in front of her. He doesn't bark unless it matters. He's not just a dog. She tilted her head, curious. What is he then? He's my instinct, Noah said, and he led me to you. Elena leaned back on the cot, exhaustion reclaiming her. I don't expect you to stay, she said quietly. We'll figure something out. But Noah didn't move, because in that moment, watching the child rest her hand on Ranger's back, watching Elena close her eyes not in fear but in brief peace, he felt it. The old code. The one they drilled into you again and again. Protect the innocent. He'd failed once. He wouldn't again. You're not going anywhere, he said. Elena opened her eyes. You don't even know us. Noah stood, picked up the pistol, checked the chamber. I don't need to, he said. I know the kind of man who's hunting you, and I know what kind of fight is coming. He looked at Ranger. You with me? Ranger gave a low, affirming huff. It wasn't a bark. It was an answer. The night settled over the woods like a closing fist, tight, silent, suffocating. Noah stood at the cabin's lone window, watching the darkness press against the glass. The fire was out, the room lit only by the dying glow of embers and the cold silver edge of moonlight through the treetops. Elena and Lily were asleep, huddled on the cot beneath layers of blankets. Ranger lay near the door, head on his paws, eyes half closed. But Noah knew better. The dog was not resting. He was listening. So was Noah. Every branch creak, every breath of wind. He had been up for hours, running perimeter loops in his head, mapping escape paths, evaluating defense. The cabin was sturdy but exposed. No line of retreat. One window. One door. No good options. That was when Ranger moved. He didn't growl. He didn't bark. He simply lifted his head and stared at the east wall. Noah's pulse tightened. He moved fast but silent, stepping to the door and crouching. He pressed his ear against the wood. There. A sound that didn't belong. Barely there. The softest snap of weight on a wet branch. A human footfall. Careful, trained. Not a hiker. Not a mistake. They had found them. Noah moved to Elena and touched her shoulder. Her eyes opened instantly. They're here, he whispered. Elena sat up without a word. Years of running had conditioned her nerves. She scooped Lily into her arms. The child stirred, groggy but silent. Corner, behind the stove. Noah said, It's the tightest angle. Stay down, no matter what. Elena nodded and slipped away. Ranger stood beside Noah now, his ears locked forward, tail stiff behind him like a flag before battle. Noah cracked open the door 2 inches and looked through the sliver. Trees, fog, shadows, then movement. A figure sweeping along the tree line, low and quick. Tactical gear, suppressed rifle. A second shape flanked wide left. 3, maybe 4. He pulled the door shut. This wasn't a snatch and grab. This was an envelopment. Professional. He grabbed the pistol, slid the mag, chambered around, checked the second in his belt. Ready? He whispered. Ranger gave a single, low grunt. Then the voice came, outside, amplified just enough to carry. Elena Brooks, my name is Wyatt. We're here on behalf of Mr. Silas Granger. Please come out peacefully. No one needs to get hurt. The voice was calm, precise, cold. Noah didn't answer. He didn't move. Wyatt continued. You've taken something that doesn't belong to you. The child, the drive. Mr. Granger is prepared to forgive if you comply. Silence. Then, "If you resist, we are authorized to use force." Noah stepped back from the door and crouched behind the overturned table. He looked to Ranger. "You flank the side. Distract. On my signal." Ranger moved like smoke, slipping around the corner, vanishing into the dark. Outside, boots shifted in wet leaves. Noah waited. 5 seconds. 10. Then chaos. A short bark cracked the silence. Then a shout. The sound of struggle. Screams. Noah burst through the door with surgical speed. 2 shots fired, one clean into the shoulder of the man to the right, who dropped with a cry. The second missed, clipped bark off a tree. A third man swung his weapon toward Noah, but Ranger was already there, leaping onto his back with a snarl. The man toppled sideways, crashing hard. His gun clattered out of reach. Noah pivoted, using the table for cover. He spotted Wyatt, standing calmly beyond. The others, handgun raised but not yet fired. His face unreadable. "Stand down, Cade," Wyatt called. "You're outnumbered." Noah didn't respond. He moved right, ducked low, aimed again. Then the flashbang came. He saw the arc too late. It landed with a soft bounce near the fire pit. No time. "Down!" he yelled, throwing himself back through the cabin door. The blast hit like a freight train, light and sound ripping through the walls, shattering all direction. Elena screamed. Lily buried her face. Noah's ears rang, vision blurred. Ranger yelped in pain. The door slammed open. Wyatt entered first, calm as a surgeon. Behind him, 2 men, one limping, one bleeding, but both armed. Noah reached for his pistol. A boot came down hard on his wrist. Pain shot up his arm. The gun slid across the floor. Wyatt knelt beside him. "You made it difficult," he said quietly. "But now it's over." Noah couldn't hear his own reply through the ringing. Wyatt stood. "Secure the package," he ordered. One man grabbed Elena. She didn't fight, just held Lily tighter. The child didn't cry. Noah looked at Ranger, who lay near the wall, stunned but alive. Then at the window, the fog outside, the forest beyond. So close, and yet all hope now felt like smoke slipping through broken boards. The cabin wasn't a fortress, it was a trap. And they had just been caught. The cabin was filled with silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that held its breath. Noah sat on his knees, wrists zip-tied behind his back, blood trickling from his temple. The remnants of the flashbang still rang in his ears. Elena and Lily were backed into the far corner, held at gunpoint by one of Wyatt's men. Ranger lay next to the hearth, dazed but alive, growling low and constant. Wyatt stood in the center of the room, his sidearm drawn, face unreadable. "You've made things complicated," he said calmly, voice flat. "Mr. Granger was clear. No loose ends. I offered you a way out." Noah didn't flinch. He looked Wyatt dead in the eyes, voice dry but steady. "Before you pull that trigger, you might want to think through what happens next." Wyatt raised an eyebrow. "Go on, enlighten me." "I'm a Navy SEAL, Tier 1, not retired, on sanctioned leave. When you showed up, I activated my subcutaneous beacon." Wyatt scoffed. "That's fiction." "Is it?" Noah leaned forward slightly. "Standard gear for high-level operatives. Signal transmits every 20 minutes. If it goes dark, Fort Lewis sends a QRF, Black Hawk insertion. You know what that means." Wyatt's expression didn't change, but the room shifted. His 2 men exchanged glances. "You're bluffing," Wyatt said flatly. "Maybe. But ask yourself this, what if I'm not? You're deep in the woods with 2 wounded teammates, standing over a SEAL with a possible active beacon. How do you think that looks from a satellite feed?" Wyatt hesitated. Just a beat. But it was enough. Elena stepped forward then, calm but with steel in her voice. "He's not the only insurance policy in this room." Wyatt turned toward her. "I have a dead man's switch," she said. "A biometric one. If I don't check in every 24 hours, the files I stole from Granger's server, bank fraud, insider trading, international bribery, they go public. FBI, SEC, Interpol. You're bluffing too, Wyatt replied, but his voice had lost some of its detachment. Elena nodded at Lily's backpack in the corner. Drive's in there, air-gapped, auto-encrypted. You want to test me? Go ahead, kill us. By sunrise tomorrow, your employer will be front-page news worldwide. Wyatt's eyes flicked toward the bag, then to Noah, then back to his men. The third operator, the one with a bandaged shoulder, spoke up. His voice was low, uncertain. Wyatt, this wasn't the brief. We were told asset retrieval, clean, no high-value targets, no federal triggers. Wyatt's jaw clenched. He looked at Noah again. You think this is going to save you? I think it already has. Noah said. You're a contractor, not a zealot. You don't get paid enough to go down with a sinking ship. A long silence followed. Then Elena stepped in closer, her tone quiet but cutting. You walk away now, Wyatt, and you get a clean report. Mission interference. No retrieval possible, no witnesses, just a fire in the woods and a sealed bag of ashes. Tell Granger we didn't make it. He'll buy it. He wants the problem gone, not explained. Wyatt turned to her. And you just let us walk? No, she said. We disappear. For good. You get out clean, and no one ever knows what you saw here. Wyatt stared at her, then back at Noah. You said Fort Lewis. If I see a single helo in the sky tomorrow, you won't. Noah replied, because we'll be ghosts. For the first time, Wyatt seemed uncertain. He took a slow breath. Then he holstered his sidearm. Cut him loose, he ordered. His man hesitated, then stepped forward and sliced the zip ties binding Noah's wrists. Noah stood slowly, eyes never leaving Wyatt. Your dog, Wyatt said quietly, nodding toward Ranger. Noah looked down. Ranger was on his feet now, standing between Lily and the doorway, tail stiff, eyes sharp. I suggest you tell him we're leaving peacefully, Wyatt said, almost amused. He already knows. Noah replied. Wyatt gave a dry nod, then turned to his team. Pack up. Leave no trace. Minutes later, the mercenaries disappeared into the forest, ghosts into fog. Noah stood in the doorway, watching the shadows retreat. Inside, Elena sat beside Lily, wrapping a blanket around her daughter's shoulders. Ranger came and leaned into Noah's side, his breathing still heavy, but steady. Noah reached down, resting a hand on the dog's neck. You knew they were coming, he whispered. Ranger looked up, eyes bright, alive, and absolutely sure he hadn't just saved them. He had known how to win without pulling a trigger. Noah looked at Elena. We're not out of it yet. No, she said. But for the first time, we're not alone either. Outside the wind shifted, but for now the cabin stood, and the war, for the moment, had paused. The forest pulsed with smoke and silence. From a ridge above the cabin, Noah stood with Ranger beside him, Elena just behind, her arm wrapped protectively around Lily. The girl held tight to her mother's side, her face smudged with soot, eyes wide but dry. Below them, the flames began to consume the structure that had hidden them. His cabin, his retreat, his cage. It burned hot and fast by design. Wyatt had set the charges himself. A contained fire, accelerants in the right corners, paper trails already prepped, shell casings left behind, bits of Noah's clothing, Elena's scarf, even a tuft of Ranger's fur from an old grooming kit. They had worked together with unnerving coordination. A mercenary and a SEAL. Two men trained for different wars, but both understanding how to disappear someone convincingly. Make it real enough, chaotic enough, irreversible enough, and no one would question it. Noah watched as the roof caved in, the fire snapping beams like brittle bone. Sparks leapt into the dark trees, but the wind held them back, and the night drank the smoke without complaint. "Granger'll believe it?" Elena asked quietly. "He wants to believe it," Noah replied. "It ends the problem. Clean, convenient." Ranger whined low in his throat. Not fear, grief. Noah glanced down at him, his hand dropping to rest between the dog's ears. "It was just wood," he said. "Just a place." But it wasn't. That cabin had been his exile, every board nailed with guilt, every drafty wall another reason not to let the world back in. And now it was gone. All of it, torn down in a matter of hours by the very thing he'd always tried to avoid. Human connection. Wyatt approached them from the tree line, flanked by the last of his men. Their eyes were wary now, not hostile, just tired. "Fire's self-sustaining," Wyatt said. "In a few hours it'll be ash. We left evidence scattered. Your death should be convincing." Noah nodded once. "And your report?" "Granger gets what he wants. You three are dead. The data's destroyed. Situation resolved. If he digs, he'll find confirmation, but he won't dig. Not if he wants to avoid the dead man's switch going off." Elena stepped forward. "You're sure he won't send someone back to verify?" Wyatt looked at her, and for once, there was something close to honesty in his face. "If he does, they'll find burned remains and enough trace DNA to close the book. He's not looking for justice. He's looking for control. He already thinks he's won." Noah exhaled. "Then it's done." Wyatt paused, then extended a small black thumb drive. "The file you gave me, the one that proves the drive is real. I'm keeping it. Insurance." "You do that," Elena said. "But remember, if we ever see you again, that switch gets flipped." Wyatt smirked, pocketed the drive, and turned to his men. "Let's move." They vanished into the trees without another word. Gone. Just like that, the war ended without a bullet. Noah looked at Elena, then Lily, then Ranger. "Time to move," he said. They hiked until dawn. Miles passed underfoot. Cold dirt, twisted roots, old paths hidden under brambles. Ranger led most of the way, never straying too far, always scanning. At one point he stopped suddenly, ears high, tail stiff. Noah raised his hand. They waited. The sound of an owl, a rustle of wind, then nothing. False alarm. But Ranger had sensed something. Not danger, transition. They reached a clearing hours later. On the far side, through the trees, Noah's backup cabin. Smaller, stripped down, built for survival, not comfort. Sat waiting. He had almost forgotten it existed. A place he built when he first arrived in the wilderness, before he'd found enough numbness to settle in one place. As they approached, Elena turned to him. "Is this home now?" Noah looked around, at the moss-covered logs, the dirt path, the quiet trees. "No," he said, "but it's a start." Inside they lit a fire. Ranger lay down near the hearth, breathing steady, his head resting on Lily's knee. She absent-mindedly stroked his ear. The girl hadn't said much since the fire, but her body had relaxed, just a little. Enough. Elena made tea from dried herbs Noah kept in an old jar. She looked tired, but not defeated. "I never asked," she said, handing him a mug. "Why'd you stay?" Noah took a sip. The warmth cut through more than just the cold. "Because when someone puts their life in your hands," he said, "you don't walk away." He looked down at Ranger. And because he didn't. The dog opened one eye, huffed softly, then closed it again. Outside, smoke still curled from the direction of the cabin. A grave marker for a version of himself Noah Cade was finally ready to bury. He didn't know what came next, but for the first time in years, he wasn't running from something. He was walking toward it. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was louder than any thunder. Noah's truck creaked up the winding road toward his secluded cabin, nestled between pines that stretched like guardians into the sky. Elena sat quietly in the passenger seat, her arm in a sling, her skin still pale. In the back seat, Lily clutched Ranger's fur like a life raft, her wide eyes watching every turn as if memorizing a route back to safety. When they arrived, the place looked like something out of a forgotten postcard. Weathered wood, an old porch swing swaying in the breeze, and smoke curling from a rusty chimney pipe. It was never meant for guests, definitely not for family, but that's what they were now, whether he was ready for it or not. Noah helped Elena out first. She moved slowly but didn't resist. She was no longer the woman fighting shadows in the hospital bed. She was present now, tethered to reality by her daughter, and strangely by him. Inside, the cabin smelled of cedar, worn leather, and the coffee he'd made before racing off to save them. Ranger padded in behind them, did a slow perimeter sweep, then settled by the fireplace. His eyes never stopped watching. It wasn't just habit. He knew this place was different now. It had to be safe. The first few days were quiet. Elena mostly rested. Lily barely spoke. Noah didn't know what to say, so he filled the silence with work. Chopping wood, fixing a shutter, patching leaks. He wasn't used to having people in his space, let alone people who'd nearly died. Sometimes he caught himself watching them when they weren't looking. The way Elena leaned on the counter just to stand. The way Lily's hand trembled before she reached for Ranger. The way Ranger gently nudged her fingers until she smiled. It started small. One morning, Noah made pancakes. Burned the first batch, swore loud enough to make Lily giggle. That same day he found her and Ranger in the backyard. She was trying to teach him to fetch a pine cone. Ranger pretended not to understand, just so she'd laugh longer. By sunset, she had a little mud on her knees and a glow in her cheeks. Noah hadn't seen her look like a kid until that moment. Elena joined them on the porch with a blanket over her shoulders. Her voice was stronger. "You're good with her," she said, eyes on Lily. Noah shrugged, uncomfortable. "Ranger's doing the heavy lifting." Elena smiled faintly. "That dog was born for battle, but now he's teaching my daughter how to breathe again." That night, Noah couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch with a coffee mug and Ranger beside him. Stars scattered the sky. Wind hummed through the trees. He looked down at the dog. "You're not just guarding the house, are you, boy?" Ranger didn't move. Just blinked once, slow and steady. The next morning, Elena was standing at the stove, trying to make eggs one-handed. Noah reached around without thinking, steadying the pan. Their hands brushed. She didn't pull away. "You cook?" she asked, a surprised smile tugging at her lips. "I survive," he said. Later that day, while cleaning out the old shed, Noah found something buried beneath a tarp, a box of his old army gear, medals, dog tags, letters, a sealed envelope he'd never opened. He sat on the floor, dirt on his jeans, Ranger sitting across from him like a silent witness. He opened the envelope. It was a letter from his CO, written after their last deployment, the one where half their team didn't come back. In it were words he'd refused to hear back then. "You were never meant to carry this alone." He looked at Ranger. "Guess we never really stopped fighting, huh?" That night, a storm rolled in. Thunder grumbled in the distance. Lily woke crying. Ranger was already at her side, pushing his weight against her, grounding her. Elena came to the doorway but didn't speak. Noah sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing her back in slow, quiet circles. "You're safe," he whispered. "We got you." The next day, Lily asked if she could paint the old barn red. Noah agreed before she finished the sentence. He drove her to town, bought more paint than they'd need, plus a giant brush she could barely carry. Elena came too, walking steadier now. They ate sandwiches in the truck on the way home. It was the first time Lily fell asleep on his shoulder. Back at the cabin, Ranger ran ahead, barking twice at the tree line. Not a warning, a declaration. They were home. Noah stood in the doorway, watching Elena and Lily disappear into the kitchen, their laughter mixing with the sizzle of something on the stove. Ranger circled the perimeter once more, then returned, lying by the door. For the first time in years, Noah didn't feel like he was hiding from the world. He felt like he was building something. And every morning that followed, when he got up before dawn to feed the chickens or fix another crooked beam, Ranger would be there, watching, waiting, walking beside him. Not guarding a soldier, guarding a home. Elena stood at the edge of the clearing, the wind tugging at her coat as dusk settled over the pines. She didn't flinch when Noah approached from behind, his boots crunching softly against the frost-laced grass. "They're getting closer," he said, holding out a printed satellite image. A black SUV had been spotted miles from the old ranger station. Elena took a breath, steady and full. "It's Granger, isn't it?" Noah nodded. "The same surveillance routes, same pattern. He's not letting go." She didn't shake. "Not this time." "Then we stop running." Ranger, lying beneath the porch steps, lifted his head. His ears twitched, eyes fixed on Elena, then Noah, watching, waiting. In the past, the mere thought of Silas Granger's name would have made her pack a bag and vanish before sunrise. But the woman standing here now wasn't the same. Not after everything this place had become. Not after Ranger. "We have something he doesn't," she said, her voice firmer. "Proof, witnesses, and people who care." Noah studied her face. "You're sure?" "I'm tired of hiding," she said. "This land has given us peace, but it's also time to fight for that peace." That night, in the warmth of the cabin, Elena pulled out the worn manila folder. Inside was everything. Documents stolen from Granger's own archives, audio files copied from whistleblower recordings, and the photo, taken the night of the fire, that showed his private security team near the scene. They didn't know how much time they had, but they finally had something solid. And they had Ranger. The next morning, Elena called the press. Not the mainstream networks that could be bought or silenced, but smaller, regional outlets, investigative bloggers, retired military reporters with integrity. She used a throwaway phone, her voice calm, measured. "You're going to get an anonymous drop," she said. "What you do with it could save lives." She hung up, turned to Noah. "Once it's out, there's no going back." Noah smiled. "We're already past that point." Ranger, sitting beside the wood stove, let out a low, soft growl. His nose pointed to the window. Something outside. Noah grabbed the binoculars and scanned the tree line. At first, nothing. Then, just between the pines, a flicker of movement. A man, too tall and still to be a hiker, dressed in black. "He's here," Noah said, but Elena didn't panic. Instead, she walked to Ranger, knelt down and whispered, "You ready?" The dog's tail gave one slow wag. Then he stood. Instead of barricading themselves inside, they made a choice. They'd drive down to Fairpoint, meet with an attorney Noah knew, one who handled whistleblower protections. Elena would testify. Noah would deliver the file. And Ranger? Ranger would ride with them like always, head out the window, eyes scanning every mile like a soldier on point. But halfway to town, just as the road dipped near Dry Lake, a truck pulled out from behind a thicket. Blacked-out windows. No plates. Noah swore, slammed the brakes. The SUV sped forward, trying to pin them. Another came from behind. Ranger was already up, barking furiously, teeth bared. Noah backed up, turned into the gravel shoulder, kicking up a storm of dust. "Hold on!" Tires screamed. The road twisted like a snake. Elena gripped the dash as the old truck bounced, barely holding traction. Behind them, the SUV swerved, skidding sideways. Then, gunfire. A crack shattered the silence. Bullet through glass. Elena screamed. The rear view exploded. Ranger leapt from the seat and threw himself over her. Noah didn't stop. He veered hard left, ploughing through a fence and into the woods. Branches scraped metal. Trees closed in. But the trail widened just enough. Another bullet. Missed. Then silence. They stopped. Heartbeats loud. Air electric. Noah turned. "Everyone okay?" Elena nodded, breathing hard. Ranger licked her hand, still alert, but calm now. She looked at Noah. "They're not going to stop, even if we do the right thing." Noah met her eyes. "Then we better make it count." That night, inside a motel in town, Elena uploaded every file. Documents, pictures, voice notes, everything. Then she scheduled the emails. Press, investigators, public interest groups. All set to send if anything happened to them. It was no longer a secret. It was a choice. She looked over at Ranger, curled up beside the door like a sentry made of muscle and loyalty. "We're not hiding anymore," she whispered. Ranger opened one eye, just for a second. Then closed it again, like he already knew, like he'd known all along. Outside, sirens wailed faintly in the distance, but inside they were finally still. Not safe, but still. And sometimes that's the first step toward something greater. The cabin looked different now. Brighter. Warmer. Not because the wood had been polished or the roof patched up, though both had been done, but because laughter lived here again. Real laughter. From children who had once only cried in whispers. From women who had once flinched at the sound of boots. 1 year had passed. Elena stood by the porch steps, watching a girl with thick brown curls help Ranger into his therapy vest. The once-scarred German shepherd didn't resist. His eyes were older now, his gait slower, but when Lily giggled and whispered, "Ready, partner?" he perked up, as if the old fire returned for just a moment. The place had grown. What started as a cabin now had 2 additional wings, hand-built with help from the local community and a few volunteers who never asked for payment. They said they owed something. Some had worn uniforms, some had once worn bruises. The official sign at the road read, "The Ridge Recovery and Resilience Center." But the locals knew it by another name. Cabin of Second Chances. Because that's what it had become. Elena walked down the gravel path where lavender now grew wild, her boots kicking up dust. She passed a row of painted rocks, each one bearing a name. Some were in memory, some were new beginnings. Noah appeared by her side, handing her a steaming mug of coffee. "Lily's reading her poem today," he said. "You coming?" Elena nodded but didn't move right away. Her eyes had settled on a familiar hill. There, near the old pine tree, was a wooden post, carved with a simple inscription. Ranger, still guarding below it, a small bench faced west. It had become a quiet space where the women sat to think, or just breathe. Ranger often waited there, instinctively knowing which soul needed him next. "You think he knows?" she asked, voice husky. "That this all started because of him?" Noah didn't answer. Instead, he leaned down, kissed her forehead and whispered, "He didn't need to know. He just did." Inside the main room, Lily stood in front of a semicircle of women and children. She looked down at her page, then back up. She didn't tremble anymore when eyes were on her. Her poem wasn't perfect, the words were simple, but every syllable held weight. "I used to dream of running. Now I dream of staying. I used to count bruises. Now I count stars. I used to whisper for help. Now I speak for others." Silence held the room for a beat too long before applause broke out. Ranger, lying beside her, let out a low bark. as if approving. Later that night, after the children had been tucked into bunk beds built from reclaimed timber, Elena sat by the fireplace, sorting through mail. Donations, letters. One envelope caught her. Attention, no return address. Inside was a photo, a blurry snapshot of the cabin taken from the ridge. On the back, "You kept your promise, thank you." There was no signature. But Elena knew. It was from someone who had once worn a badge, or maybe a scar, or maybe both. She looked over at Ranger, who snored softly by the fire. "You're still watching, huh?" she said, half smiling. He didn't move. Didn't need to. Outside, the wind stirred the chimes on the porch, a soft song, like a whisper. In the guest book, written by someone just days ago, were 6 words scratched in a trembling hand. "He didn't guard the cabin. He guarded us." Elena closed the book gently, her hand resting on its cover. Sometimes the best legacy isn't gold or glory. It's a promise kept, and a dog who never stopped guarding. The last light of day bled gold across the sky as Noah sat on the creaky wooden steps of the cabin. His elbows rested on his knees, fingers loosely clasped. Beside him Ranger lay still, alert but calm, his ears slightly perked, his chest rising and falling with the rhythm of the mountain wind. It had been 6 months since the chaos. 6 months since Noah and Ranger discovered the truth behind the buried ledger, exposed the land fraud, and saved the ridge from being stripped bare. The developers had backed off, the town had rallied, and the sheriff, who once mocked Noah's return, now made routine stops just to ask how the old lodge was doing. But it wasn't just about the land, or even the truth. It was about purpose, about watching over something that couldn't be replaced. Ranger shifted slightly, letting out a quiet huff. His muzzle was graying now, the black of his coat still rich but softened by time. His eyes scanned the tree line, always watching, always guarding. There was no enemy anymore, no one left to fight. And yet, Ranger's posture never changed. Noah chuckled to himself and reached down, running his hand over the German shepherd's strong back. "You still don't know how to rest, do you?" he murmured. The porch light clicked on automatically as the sun dipped below the ridge. From the open window behind them, a podcast played, one of those local veteran stories people liked to submit to late-night radio. The host's voice, gravelly and reverent, carried out into the cooling dusk. "Tonight we honor a man and his dog, not for fighting a war, but for staying behind to guard something more precious. In a world that moves too fast, they stayed still. In a world that forgot, they remembered. Some battles aren't fought on foreign soil. Some are fought right here, against silence, loss, and time itself." Ranger raised his head as if listening. Noah smiled, eyes glassy but proud. He looked down at the dog who had crossed fire, betrayal, storms, and grief, and still lay here, like a sentry carved from loyalty. "Still guarding, huh?" he whispered. Ranger looked up at him with calm certainty. No bark, no growl, just presence. The camera slowly pulled back, the porch light glowing warmly, the flag gently fluttering in the breeze, and the outlines of the mountains surrounding them like old friends standing watch. Noah leaned back, the old wooden chair groaning beneath him. He didn't need crowds, applause, or medals. He had what mattered. Ranger. And a place worth guarding. The screen faded to black. Then a quiet line appeared, white on dark. He didn't bark for food. He barked for purpose. And then, "What's your story with a loyal pet?" Subscribe to German Shepherd for more true stories of bravery, loyalty, and the bond that never breaks.